I think really some of the top things are really being service oriented and outwardly focused is one of the major things. We really hire for and look for people that want to make this world better, and they've proven that in their history, in their past, in their past resume, in their past jobs, in their past actions, that the kind of things that they tackle and want to take on are really mission driven initiatives that really are about making the world around them a better place than when they came into it. And they're focused on that. They're focused on outwardly serving humanity. They're not focused on themselves and what can make them happy. They're focused on others. And I think that's really a big point for us.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Dane Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today, we're going to talk about culture, specifically how leaders can shape culture. When you think about your own culture, is it just happening by intention or is it happening at default? When I really think about culture, there's a lot of elements to it. It's not just one thing, and it's certainly not, free sodas and free lunches and beanbag chairs and ping pong tables and pool tables. It is about the way people connect with each other. It's about the way they trust each other. It's about the way they collaborate and communicate with each other. It's about the way they get things done. And when you have the right culture, you will have a company that you love going to work to. So leaders shape the culture. And so today our guest is Dane Witbeck with Pinwheel. He is a CEO of Pinwheel. They're Inc. 5,000 level company, which is like most of the clients or people that have been on the podcast before, not clients. But I share this with you about culture because I believe that leaders do shape the culture. And I think that top leaders in the company, like CEOs, that don't really pay attention to culture because they say it's someone else's job, are missing the opportunity. You want to be intentional about culture. You want to have values. Dane calls them principles of the company, and those things are very important. You also want to have leadership development across the company as your company scales. He talks about when he put this in place and why it was so important to do it early. He also looks at some of the core elements and some of the things that you can learn from this and use to change your culture, and many of them are absolutely free. So if you're facing any kind of challenges in your growth and headwinds with your business and it's not where you want it to be, then this is the episode for you, because leaders shape culture. My name is Dane Hammett. I'm an executive coach. We work with not just fast growing companies. We work with a lot of variety of companies as they are trying to grow and trying to meet the next level of leadership. And if you have a big opportunity in front of you and you want to make sure your team is aligned together, that you have everything buttoned up and you're ready for that opportunity, then we want to have a conversation just to make sure that you're not missing things. There's some blind spots out there that I've seen. There's also some really simple things that you can do, and you pay attention to them, many of them free. You can actually have a better culture. You can have a better performance team. You can actually be in more alignment. If you're curious about the work we do through executive coaching and leadership development, just send me an email, gene@genehammett.com. I'm not here to sell you. I really do believe that those people listening in, trying to get better, are really incredible opportunities for me to connect with. If you want to have the conversation, I promise not to sell you in the first conversation. I will give to you as much as I can. I will help you. I will create a plan with you. I will help you prioritize things. You won't leave confused. You will leave clear. And if that's what you're interested in, send me an email, gene@genehammett.com. Happy to help you. Now, here's the interview with Dane. Dane, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
I'm excited to have you. We both have neon right above our heads. It's the
Yep.
first time I've had that happen for both of us. Before we dive into our topic today, I'd love to know a little bit about your company. So tell us about Pinwheel.
Yeah, so Pinwheel is a kids technology company, really kids and family. We started out making a smartphone product for kids between the age of about 10 and 15. It's a first phone for kids, really to solve the problem of really digital health amongst the rising generation. What I wanted to do was to teach kids how to use personal tech in their lives to make them super and incredible and help them accomplish their goals, and to limit and sort of eliminate all the downsides that can come with personal tech that I think all of us have become familiar with.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. Where do you see this going over the next 5 years? Because I know you're much closer to where this is, and I know that things are changing fast.
Yeah, so I think we're going to continue to use personal technology. So, spoiler alert, it's not going anywhere. There's been a big push to sort of limit smartphones amongst kids. And I think that that makes a lot of sense, especially when you talk about the dangerous and bad aspects of smartphone ownership for kids. So, social media is something that's been proven by research to be damaging to kids. And in the same way that we saw sort of smoking come up in favor and then go down, I think you're going to see the same kind of cultural zeitgeist shift here, where you're going to have parent groups continue to put pressure on regulators, and there's going to be really a full zeitgeist change where it will not be normal to give a full adult smartphone that's been designed for adults to anybody under 16 years old. And I think that's a huge help and benefit, and will be a big, huge help and benefit to families and kids when we really get over that hump. I'd say we're still not over that hump yet, but when we get there, I think that's going to be huge. And then I think there's going to be a rise of products like ours to fill that space. So we're not a full smartphone designed for adults. We are really a phone designed to be a first phone, a training wheels, if you will, kind of for kids. And so some people call it dumb phones, things like that. If you're talking about it for adults, but for us, it's really the kids phone industry that's going to rise to, I think, sort of take over this role of both sort of giving them tools they can use and also training them along the way.
I get it. I know my son's probably older than your kids, and I remember when he was wanting a phone, and the peer pressure behind that was pretty tough.
Yeah, I mean, we don't get into nuance enough with phones, right? It stays at this sort of black and white sort of level where most people say, like, phone or not phone. Are you going to get your kid a phone or not get them a phone? Will they have it or not? And really, there's all kinds of different phones that do all kinds of different things. And I think as we dive into the space, we'll learn, and people are learning, that there's a big difference between giving a kid a dumb phone and giving them a fully smartphone designed for adults, right? It's a lot like the car industry. In the beginning, there was a Ford Model T, and then now there's 20 different brands that sell a whole bunch of different types of phones, types of cars, sorry. And the phones are the same way. I think, your kid may say, hey, I want a Corvette when they're 16. But do we give them a Corvette when they're 16? Do we give them a Ferrari? No. We give them like the Honda Accord, or, something safe that they can handle so they can learn. And it's the same thing when you look at their personal technology. There's products out there like ours now that are really designed for kids to be a first product for them. Not going to harm them, not going to be bad for them, takes away all the research-backed harms that happen with smartphones and kids, but gives them the ability to start using it on their own, which they really need to learn how to do.
I love it. I actually would have loved to have had this solution, I don't know, 7 years ago when my kid was young. Dane, you made the Inc. list. You've got a team around you. What would you say is the driving factor within your culture or leadership that really makes you guys successful?
Yeah, there's several things. There's not just one thing you can point to, but I think really some of the top things are really being service oriented and outwardly focused is one of the major things. We really hire for and look for people that want to make this world better, and they've proven that in their history, in their past, in their past resume, in their past jobs, in their past actions, that the kind of things that they tackle and want to take on are really mission driven initiatives that really are about making the world around them a better place than when they came into it. And they're focused on that. They're focused on outwardly serving humanity. They're not focused on themselves and what can make them happy. They're focused on others. And I think that's really a big point for us.
I love that, because I can see that, this phone thing is not just a product, but it's about keeping kids safe and that natural progression into the technology. What else do you feel like is a big part of your, I know that one of the things that we found of you guys is leadership and development. You guys take it pretty seriously. Tell me a little bit about what that looks like at Pinwheel.
Well, we take the cultural principles that we espouse at Pinwheel really seriously. This is not my first company. I've done this before, so I learned at the first company that a culture happens whether or not you make the effort to shape it or not. It will happen when you put people together. Cultures emerge, and so as a leader, one of the goals for me is to shape that culture into the kind of place that I want to work. Why would, as a leader that started a company, why would I want to be somewhere that is not the type of place I personally want to work? And so I think it's about setting down those principles and those cultural principles and actually writing them down. And so we went through a pretty big effort, even in the midst of hyper growth, where it seemed like this shouldn't be maybe the biggest priority. We took the time out to write down our cultural principles. We call them our pinwheelers principles. And I think that, writing them down really gives us a place that we can point to train people on them and to do everything around them, hire around them, fire around them, promote around them, celebrate around them. So they really become a linchpin of your culture when you take the time to write them down and then build the reinforcing mechanisms to continue to see them evolve.
You call them principles, and I might frame them as values. Are they the one and the same, or is it a little bit different for you?
Yeah, I mean, there might just be a bit of an alliteration that we went for there, a pinwheeler's principles. I don't know that I don't know there's a big difference in my mind. You can call them cultural values, you can call them principles, but yeah, it's the base operating system that you're looking for the people that work at your company, right?
I recently wrote a book on tough conversations. That's one reason why there's the neon behind me. But I thought my next book would be around values. So many of these interviews I've had with CEOs like yourself of fast growth companies have said, you know what, it may not seem like it's the most important thing in the world, but getting it right does make a lot of things easier. And so you guys did this pretty early. Do you remember how many employees you were when you had the Pinwheelers principles defined?
Probably less than 10. Yeah. Like less than 10. Yeah. I would say probably 7 or 8 people.
And you don't regret it, the time that you put into it, I'm sure.
No, and we did put quite a bit of time into it. I think, there's different ways to do it. You could slap this down in an hour, right? If you wanted to write some words or go on. We didn't have ChatGPT at the time, but
yeah,
if you wanted to go on ChatGPT and say, write me, 10 cultural principles or something for my company, it would spit them out in 2 seconds. So, you can do it as fast as you want. And actually, I wouldn't say don't use ChatGPT to help refine your ideas, but I would say make sure that you think deeply. And the more, as a founder, the more you know yourself, I think the more you know about yourself and the more sort of, I would say, emotional maturity you've been able to gain as a leader, the better you can do at this exercise of building these principles around sort of shaping the culture of your company towards a kind of place where you personally would want to work and thrive. Because it's as a founder, it's very important that the company fits with you and your style, and that the people around you also really mesh with you and your style, because there are different style leaders and there's not one correct answer. There's different styles that can work.
Now, let me break in here for a second. We've been talking about values, or as Dane put it, the principles of his business. And I want to give you kind of a playbook that I've used before. I'm happy to give you an email that has the details of this, but I sit down with a lot of executive teams. First, I'll sit down with the owner and I'll frame this in about the values, and they all know it's important, but they don't take the time to do it. And so I will pull out of the owner the values of the team, what makes our company so successful. And usually we're just looking at individual people and players and what kind of character traits they have, and we're trying to document that and look for patterns. But then what I want to do is sit down with the executive leadership team and do a process where we look at a different long list of values, and we start to exclude things. We start to circle things. We start to count them. We start to reframe them and reshape them. And what's really interesting when this goes well, and sometimes this is done over a couple of meetings, is you will find people go, we need to fight for, it's not just trust, it's maintaining trust. No, it's not just maintaining trust. It's how do you establish trust and maintain it? And so the back and forth collaboration, brainstorming, if you will, and even healthy conflict around the values is really a beautiful thing to see, because what you're left with at the end of that experience, and it could take 2 to 3 meetings as I described, is something that everyone's bought into. They participated together. The executive or the founder of the company has their version, and it usually is pretty close to what the executive team comes up with, but they don't feel like they're handed a playbook. They feel like they've created the playbook for the culture of the business. All that being said, if you want the details of that, because I've written a book around this, I just haven't published it yet, and I would love to give it to you. Just send me an email, gene@genehammett.com, and just say, process for creating values. Happy to share it with you. And if there's anything else I can help you with, just make sure you let me know. Now back to Dane. I get it. I have a lot of clients that will go, well, isn't it just really just about the people? And I said, well, let's just take one example. If you're reactive or if your people are reactive and you think they should be proactive and you really value proactivity and everyone around you is reactive, you're going to be very frustrated at work. And they're like, yeah, I got it. But I said, so that's one of your core principles. It can be phrased in whatever different ways, values, but it really does come from the top leadership of the company. Founders usually are the top leadership of that, but it can be, you can include the executive team to make sure that we're all aligned together, because you've hired these higher level people. But that's my perspective as an executive team whenever I'm working with them on redefining their values. Dane, when you think about your own leadership, how would you frame that in to help us understand how your company's been successful?
Yeah, for me, I'm a very collaborative leader. So I'm somebody who really thrives around getting a bunch of ideas around a table and getting all of them out and sort of playing with them, right? So I really love that and thrive on collaboration together and group work, you could say.
Okay.
Everyone going to their own corner and doing their own thing and then coming back and telling everybody, what's going to happen is just not my style. So I really like open-minded people who are quick to change their mind based on new data, people who are capable of separating their ideas from their personality, from their own self-esteem, you could say,
Yeah.
which is something that's very challenging for a lot of us. But it's something that's really key to work well with me, because we're about trying to get to the right answer, not trying to get to somebody's answer.
I know leadership development is a part of what you guys have included in Pinwheel, and everyone has an individual plan. What does that look like?
Well, we from an operational perspective, we use Notion, which I think a lot of companies use these days. It's a huge wiki product, and we can build private individual pages that are templated for each employee. So, we don't have to, take a long time, and it's all standardized. We can stand up the template for each employee and say, hey, here's the place where we're keeping track of your personal development. And we actually go into both personal and professional development in our leadership development. So every employee has a one-on-one with their direct manager at least every 2 weeks. And in that meeting, you will pull open that Notion page and you'll look at your goals. So what are your goals that you're trying to accomplish professionally at the company? And what are the goals you're trying to accomplish personally in your life? And how are you doing towards those? So there's an element here where a manager needs to be not just a manager, but really a leader and a personal coach for their people and helping them to level up and develop. And so a lot of times there's a cross reference here between what's going on with your goals and what's going on with you and the Pinwheelers principles. So we'll look at the Pinwheelers principles and pull them up as well, and say, which one of these areas are you working on now, or what could you do in these areas? So they're kind of a prompt in that way.
I know when I first started out in my own entrepreneurial ventures, 2001, 2002, and as I started building the team, I would never have said that I was a coach to my employees. But as I gotten a little bit more experience and I realized that coaching was better, because I had a coach. And I remember one time I was really struggling with being more of a firefighter than a CEO. I actually reflected on that recently in a LinkedIn post, but I find that a lot of managers might say that they're a coach, but they really don't know how to really be a coach. And I'm not, maybe you guys have this figured out. Do you guys give them training on coaching as a manager?
Well, I'd say that's everybody has a one-on-one, right? So
Yeah.
when I'm doing, my direct reports, when I have one-on-ones with my direct reports, we're a lot talking about them becoming a better coach, because that's a big part of their job, right? If you're talking more about, somebody further down the line, they may have a few, direct reports in our customer service department, for example. They need to be a coach, but they also need to be a manager in those cases. They need to be able to manage to, the metrics that the company is going towards. So I think depending on the person right above them it should be tailoring that coaching to that person. And that can include, it's a bit meta, but that can include coaching the coacher, right?
Now, let me add this in here. A lot of people think they understand coaching. And I think it comes from being in high school sports. You have a coach and the coach tells you what to do and they tell you what you're not doing. They hold you accountable. They force you and challenge you to grow. And that is a part of coaching. But a big part of professional coaching in a business setting is asking the right questions, knowing what questions to ask. It's not fancy questions. Sometimes it's, what's your next move? Or what would you do from here? What's getting in the way? Why aren't you confident enough to make that decision? Those kind of questions really allow the other person to take ownership. Now, one of the things I wanted to highlight here is I've done a lot of research with this, and we've got a leadership development company, and we've asked more than 200 people about their skill as a coach, and they will initially say it's very good. And I know that when I get on the phone with them and I say, okay, you're going to coach someone through this challenge, how do you coach them through it? I have rarely ever, in hundreds and hundreds of conversations, had someone be able to tell me what coaching looks like in a conversation like that. So they don't really know what it is. And so if you have people out there that you want to be better coaches, then you want to make sure they get the right frameworks and tools. We have some of those that we've done in different training and workshops that we've done for people. But if you just want to do that better, reach out to me. I'd love to help you figure out what's missing and how your people can be better coaches and how you can even be a better coach as a CEO or a leader of your company. Back to Dane. Yeah, I go back to my own personal journey because I didn't know what coaching was my first 10 years, really, even though I had a coach. I didn't see that as my role as a leader. Now I see a lot of companies that struggle because they have okay managers, but the managers tell them how to do everything. And they don't really embrace the coaching approach to it, which is, to me, a mixture of how to do it, but also unlocking some of the other things that are holding people back, like the lack of confidence or, something that needs to be switched on or off or a blind spot. But I really appreciate you're adding the personal element in there. Did you guys find that was just something that you wanted to add, or is there a benefit to it that allows you guys to have the kind of culture you want?
I think there's definitely a benefit to it to build our culture. We're building something that's an incredibly close product to people's core. I'll say it's, when you're building personal technology, that's the closest piece of technology that they use day in and day out. There's something that becomes very personal about that. And when you're building a phone that's going to go in a kid's hand, that a mom and a dad is going to trust you to sort of be there and be an aid and companion to help raise their child in this digital, wilderness that we're in. And they're really trusting you with that. There's this level of trust that just transcends, typical career and work-oriented talk. And so we want to embody that ability to get close to our customers within our company. We want our managers to get close to our people. We want our people to get close to our customers. We want really to be trust, really is, I guess, the key word. We want to be trusted as more than just a product and more than just as, sort of your place that you work. And I think, that sort of bringing the personal into it helped to reinforce that core value.
I think you may have said this, but I want to kind of put it in my own frame because I think the personal side of goals is not something people normally put into a development plan for an employee. But if you value your employee being heard and they understand you, then it's another element where you're like, oh, like, for example, I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I saw you signed up for a tournament. How'd it go? Like just asking those questions about, oh, I'm working on that. And it's a completely personal thing, but you know what? I'm always good at like, what have I learned from that personal thing that I'm using in my work today?
Oh, yeah. And I think the things that we know today about your physical fitness level and the amount of physical activity you're able to put out day in and day out, how it affects your brain and mind and the way you show up at work. I mean, that research is there. So I don't think anybody could claim that, at least in that aspect, it's not directly related, right? Like I want people that are happy and healthy in every aspect of their lives and their personal relationships, in their, whatever fitness goals they're going for, in whatever, hobbies that they're pursuing, whatever they are, whatever side things they're going into. And I mean, in some cases, it even gets into literally side hustles where we know some of our people are working on making money outside of our company, and we tell them that's great. You're here to do your job for us, and we think you're doing it. We'll tell you if you're not doing a great job for us, but as long as you are doing a great job for us, sure, pursue that, keto brownie, that you're trying to make on the side, and try to see if you can get it, sold at the farmer's market this Saturday. Those kind of things we hear about, and it's great, right? And they learn things through those exercises as well, right? They learn about all kinds of things.
I am so glad that this came up as a part of the conversation because I think that a lot of people leave it out at a mistake to culture and to a connection and bond between people. So the fact that you guys have the Notion and the wikis that allow you to have this, and every 2 weeks, I'm glad that this came up as a part of today's conversation. Dane, really a pleasure to get to know you and get to understand what makes you guys tick over there at Pinwheel. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Wow, what another great interview here. I love talking with leaders in the trenches the Growth Think Tank podcast is something I have enjoyed doing for more than 10 years. And Dane's conversation today is helpful. I love talking about the values of a company and why they're so important. It never gets old. I love talking about leadership development and the key elements that make that happen inside of companies. And so if you are curious about how we can help you through executive coaching or leadership development and coaching your managers to be the leaders you need them to be, then make sure you reach out to me, Gene@genehammett.com. If you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, leave with courage. I'll see you next time.